The last time I saw her name on my screen, she was destroying my career. Now they say she needs my bone marrow to live. I was still in my lab at Boston Biogenics, finishing a progress report on autoimmune sequencing. Tuesday evening, just past 7:00 p.m. The fluorescent lights buzzed low overhead. The sterile scent of antiseptic hung faintly in the air. I was ticking off one last box on the summary form when my phone vibrated across the desk. Mom. The name alone tightened something in my chest. I hesitated a moment too long, but eventually I answered. Lauren, she began. No greeting, no warmth. It's Vanessa. She's sick. It's leukemia. Aggressive. There was a beat of silence. I didn't respond. They've tested the family. You're the only match. Her voice cracked, but I knew better than to trust that sound. I picked up my pen again and tapped it slowly against the desk. And she needs a bone marrow transplant, Mom continued as if I hadn't heard the first time. You're her only chance. I let the words hang there, not out of cruelty, but because I had learned that silence in our family was louder than any scream. Funny how these things work. 6 months ago, Vanessa orchestrated a campaign that got me suspended from a 5-year federally funded research project. She falsified emails, planted manipulated reports, and even paid off Shannon Kerr, my former assistant, to file a complaint with the ethics committee. Why? Because I was getting too close to a breakthrough she couldn't match. Now, the same girl who stood by while my reputation burned wanted a piece of my spine. The irony was acidic. I'll think about it, I said. Then I hung up. I sat there in the hum of cold light, my hands shaking slightly. My office, once a safe haven of focus and logic, suddenly felt suffocating. I grabbed my coat and headed out, almost bumping into Jade in the hallway. Whoa, easy, she steadied me. You look like you saw a ghost. Worse. Family, I muttered, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. Vanessa's sick. They want my bone marrow. Jade froze. The same Vanessa who made you the university's cautionary tale for 2 years. I nodded. She folded her arms. So what now? I shook my head. Mom's probably already on her way to guilt trip me in person. Right on cue, my phone buzzed again. A text. Coming to your office. We need to talk. Mom. Jade glanced at the screen and raised an eyebrow. Want me to stay? No, I said. This is something I need to handle alone. 20 minutes later, the door burst open. Mom walked in with the scent of Chanel No. 5 and desperation, holding a manila envelope like it was a holy script. She looked older than I remembered, more gray at the roots, more haggard behind the eyes. She spread out a stack of medical papers across my desk. It's not a dangerous procedure, she said, all business. You'll be back at work in a week. She needs this, Lauren. Please. I leaned back in my chair and took my time scanning one of the papers. I wasn't reading it. I was watching her. Hello to you too, Mom. She rolled her eyes. Don't be difficult. This is your sister's life we're talking about. I smirked. Interesting choice of words. When my career was on the line, when I was facing academic expulsion and public humiliation, was that not my life? That again. She waved a hand dismissively. You're still obsessed with those ridiculous accusations. Vanessa would never. I have proof. That stopped her. For once she blinked. I have witness statements. I have audio. And I have the email thread where she coordinated the takedown with Shannon Kerr. Would you like to see it? Her face went pale, but her mouth tightened in defiance. Whatever happened in the past doesn't matter now. She's your sister. I stood up, walked to the filing cabinet behind me, and pulled out a folder. The label was clean typed and deliberate. DNA, private. I laid it gently on the desk between us. What is that? She asked, voice trembling slightly. Insurance, I said, in case this moment ever came. You really thought I wouldn't dig? After the lies, after the betrayal. You thought I wouldn't question everything? Her eyes flitted between the folder and my face. Don't do this. No games, Mom. Just truth. For once. She reached forward like she might close the folder, but I stopped her with a single sentence. She's not my full sister. We don't share a father. That broke her composure. She sat down hard in the chair opposite me. You're wrong, she whispered. I'm not. Silence stretched between us. I placed the DNA report gently in front of her, the words paternity probability 0% glaring in bold. I'll give you my answer in 3 days, I said, voice even. Until then, I suggest you think very carefully about what secrets you're willing to have exposed. Especially to Eduardo Alvarez, who's still practicing at Memorial in Phoenix. The color drained completely from her face. She stood without another word, gathered the medical papers, and left the office. Her heels clicked quickly down the hallway, like she was trying to outrun something. She was. She just didn't know I'd already caught it. I sat down again, reached into my drawer, and pulled out the second copy of the DNA results. The truth in black and white. Not for vengeance. Not yet. Just for clarity, Vanessa wasn't just my enemy. She wasn't even my blood. And yet they had come to me, because after all the lies and the sabotage and the manipulation, I was the only one they thought might still have enough of a heart to help. They were wrong. They always counted on guilt to win, I whispered to no one. But I came armed with facts. I turned off the lights, locked the folder back in place, and walked out into the cold Boston night. 3 days. Let's see what they choose. She needs me to save her. But first she needs to know what she destroyed. The hospital stood quietly under the gray Boston sky, a 7-story box of glass and stone that smelled like antiseptic and fading hope. I walked through the automatic doors, dressed in black, not for mourning, but for clarity. I wasn't here to save anyone. I was here to deliver a truth long overdue. Vanessa was on the 4th floor hematology unit, room 488B. I knew that because my mother had emailed the full medical record complete with timestamps, lab results, and even a note. Nurse Lisa is on the morning shift. Very cooperative. Cold, efficient, predictable. As I pushed open the door, the familiar image of my sister came into focus, and yet she wasn't the same. Vanessa lay in bed propped up by crisp white pillows, her skin pale and stretched thin over cheekbones. But even now she was perfectly arranged silk robe draped over her shoulders, her hair tucked behind her ears just so, and her lips tinted with the softest shade of pink. Always performing. She glanced up from her phone and saw me, smiled. Well, look who finally showed up, she said, voice thinner but still laced with mockery. Come to play the hero. I didn't move closer. I didn't smile back. Actually, I said calmly, I came to say no. To your face. Her smile faltered. You can't be serious. Dead serious. Something behind her eyes flickered. Not surprise. Something closer to fear, quick and sharp. You'd really let me die. I stepped forward, slow and deliberate. After everything you did? Let's recap, shall we? From my bag, I pulled a voice recorder not to use, just to show her that I had it. That I had everything. Tatum, Shannon, the fake emails, the altered data, the university ethics board. 5 years of work mine ruined because you couldn't stand that someone else had earned something. Her eyes darkened. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Didn't mean for me to be blacklisted from every Ivy-affiliated research program, I said, voice low. Didn't mean for me to lose funding, respect, credibility. I didn't think they'd believe me. They believed you because Mom vouched for you, I said flatly. Because when you lie, you do it with clean nails and a perfect smile. But I have what they never asked for proof. She turned her face to the window, jaw clenched. I paused. And then I asked the question I'd waited years to ask. Why? A long silence. And then for the first time, her mask cracked. Because you had everything real, she said bitterly. Your degrees, your research, your credibility, your goddamn reputation. All I ever had were hand-me-downs and illusions. I faked it because I had to. I stood there in silence, letting her confession hang in the air. Then I set the folder down on the tray table beside her. She reached for it cautiously. Inside was a notarized affidavit. A full confession pre-written and legally formatted, admitting to everything. The sabotage, the collaboration with Shannon, the manipulation, and Mom's role in covering it all up. At the bottom, I, Vanessa Myers, fully acknowledge and accept responsibility for the events described above. A blank line for her signature. You sign that, I said coolly. Get it notarized. Then I'll consider the bone marrow. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. You're bargaining with a dying woman. No. I'm demanding honesty from someone who used my life as a stepping stone. She clutched the folder tightly, breathing shallow. I turned to leave. Lauren, she called after me, voice trembling. Why are you doing this now? I paused at the door. Because there's one more truth you need to hear. I took a folded photo from my pocket and placed it on the edge of her tray. She picked it up with trembling fingers. It was a headshot, professional, confident, familiar. This is Dr. Miguel Alvarez, I said. Chief of surgery at Memorial Hospital in Phoenix. Vanessa blinked. So, he's your biological father. The room went dead still. You're lying, she whispered. I'm not. DNA doesn't lie. He's in Boston. Checked into the Marriott yesterday. I called him. Her face drained of color. The performance vanished. You should ask Mom before your time runs out. I walked away. Each step echoed with finality. Outside, Jade was waiting by the elevator. In her hand was the USB. Every file, every voice memo, every document. She signed it yet, she asked. Not yet, I said. But she will. You really told her about Alvarez. She deserves to know the truth. I said, pushing the elevator button. They both do. Jade glanced down at the USB. You really planned this all out? They never thought I'd fight back, I murmured as the doors opened. They definitely never thought I'd bring science into it. As the elevator descended, I pulled out my phone. I had a meeting to arrange with the man who had no idea he had a daughter. And with the woman who had built her life on lies so seamless they almost became family truth. But not anymore. Now the truth had a voice, and I was done whispering. They wanted a family meeting. I brought the truth and a witness. The house on Willow Creek Lane hadn't changed much in 15 years. Still white-bricked with navy shutters, still trimmed hedges, still pretending to be a place of peace. Charleston air had a way of making memories humid, sticky things that clung to your skin even when you tried to wipe them clean. I stepped out of the car with Jade behind me. Her heels clicked against the driveway as she checked the document folder one more time. But I didn't need reassurance. Everything was ready. Mom had asked for this meeting. Said it would be just the three of us. A quiet conversation. She called it a chance to be a family again. She always had a gift for euphemisms, lies dressed in pearls. I rang the doorbell. Jade didn't speak, but her presence was steel at my side. The door opened. Carol Myers stood there freshly blow-dried, wearing a silk blouse in a shade of denial. Lauren, she said, voice too bright, I'm glad you came. I didn't come alone, I said, stepping past her. Jade followed without being invited. Vanessa was already seated in the living room, bundled in a cream blanket on the velvet couch. Her makeup was lighter today, but the defiance in her eyes hadn't dulled. The same house that held our birthday parties and spelling bee posters now played host to this charade. I hope this won't be combative. Carol began, clasping her hands like a diplomat. We're here because we need to come together. No, I corrected her, setting my folder on the coffee table. You're here because you need something. I'm here because I'm done pretending. The room went quiet. I brought 3 things, I continued. Truth, accountability, and a witness. I nodded toward Jade. Everything today is documented. If it's not signed, it's submitted. Vanessa's fingers twitched under the blanket. Mom exhaled. Lauren, sweetheart, please. We've all said and done things we regret. No, I cut her off. You did things. She did things. I survived them. That's not the same. I reached into my folder and pulled out the first envelope. slid it across the table. DNA results, I said. From an accredited lab. Confirmed with the second panel. Carol paled. Vanessa blinked. I'm not your full sister, I said to Vanessa. We don't share a father. You're not a Bennett. Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came. Carol tried to reach for the envelope, but I stopped her. Don't bother. You already know what it says. She sat back slowly, mouth tight. I don't care if you slept with someone else, I said, voice steady. I care that you lied. To him, to me, to both of us. And then used that lie to justify everything you did. Lauren, Carol began, but before she could spin another sentence, the doorbell rang again. I didn't move. Jade stood and opened it. Eduardo Alvarez stepped into the house like a storm with manners. Gray suit, pressed collar, eyes full of 32 years he never got to live. Vanessa's breath caught audibly. He saw her, and he knew. She looked just like him. Dr. Alvarez, Tharpe said, thank you for coming. He nodded. It's important. Carol stood, but looked like she might faint. You shouldn't have brought him, she whispered. You don't get to decide who deserves the truth anymore, I replied. Vanessa stared at Eduardo, her voice breaking. Is it true? He answered gently. I didn't know. Not until Lauren contacted me. Carol finally snapped. You had no right, Mom, I said. Sit down and listen. From the folder, I pulled 2 more documents. The first, a confession pre-written outlining Carol's deception. Paternity fraud, years of emotional manipulation, interference in both the daughters' lives. A signature line waited at the bottom. The second, Vanessa's confession, signed but not yet notarized. Jade placed a pen on the table between them. You want the bone marrow, I said. You earn it. Carol's hands shook. If you go to the press, I will, I said flatly. Every scientific journal that blacklisted me. Every university that cut me off. Every legal department that should have seen through the fraud. This isn't revenge, it's record correction. Vanessa looked at me. Something new in her face, less pride, more awareness. I signed mine, she said quietly. I sent it to your lawyer this morning. I blinked. You did. She nodded. After you left the hospital, I read the whole thing. Then I called Eduardo. We talked. Carol's voice cracked. You don't know what this will do to our family. There's no "our" in this family anymore, I said coldly. You burned that bridge when you taught her how to lie like you. I raised you both, she snapped. No, I said. You raised a weapon, and you underestimated the other. I looked at Eduardo. Would you like to say something? He nodded. I want to know my daughter, if she wants to know me. Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. I do. Carol covered her face. I stood. You always played your life in shadows, I told her. I'm bringing daylight. She didn't reply. Jade stood collecting the signed confession. Eduardo helped Vanessa rise from the couch, steadying her. It was the first honest act in this room all morning. I walked toward the door, turning back only once. By the way, I said softly, I don't hate either of you. I just refuse to be erased. Then I stepped out of the house, where everything false had once been built, and left with nothing but the truth in my hands. Not vengeance, not victory, just freedom. Vanessa asked me yesterday if we were ever really sisters. I said no, but we could have been. That answer stayed with me all night, like a shadow cast by something too large to name. And when the hospital called this morning to say Vanessa had collapsed, I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I packed my bag, checked the folder one more time, and drove through the Boston fog like a woman who knew the storm wasn't coming. It had already passed. Room 418B again. Same beige walls, same machine beeps. But the woman in the bed was not the same. Vanessa looked soft. Not in weakness, but in surrender. Her face no longer held its usual calculation. Her hands trembled when she reached for the cup on her tray. She barely managed a whisper when I walked in. I wasn't sure you'd come. I stood by the door, coat still buttoned. You asked to see me. I don't owe you more than that. She nodded, slow, deliberate. You were right, she said, about everything. I didn't respond. I spent last night reading the DNA report, again she added. Then I called Brianna. That got my attention. Brianna Monroe. She nodded. I gave her a letter, just in case. If anything happened to me. I stepped forward slowly. Vanessa pulled open the top drawer of her bedside table. From within, she retrieved a sealed envelope with my name on it. Her fingers hesitated before letting it go. I took it, feeling the weight of both confession and consequence. I wrote everything she said, voice cracking. The emails, the research sabotage, the phone calls with Tatum. Even the night Mom told me to follow you to that conference in New Haven. I clenched the envelope tighter. She said you were arrogant, Vanessa continued. That you'd never share credit. That if I didn't balance the scale, you'd erase me from the family entirely. I let out a long breath. She told me something different, of course. That you were jealous. That you were sabotaging me out of spite. Vanessa closed her eyes. She wanted us to destroy each other. We stood in that silence for a long moment, me upright with rage, dulled by exhaustion. Her collapsed under the weight of a lifetime lived in someone else's narrative. I've made peace with the idea that I may not live through this, she said finally. But I didn't want to die still lying. Especially not to you. I stared at her, pale, defeated, and yet, maybe for the first time, honest. Outside, I knew Harper was already working. She had the digital copies of every file. The contacts at the ethics board, the press, the universities. We were ready. There would be no reversal this time. No quiet dismissal of what happened. I slid the envelope into my briefcase. You think a confession fixes this? I asked quietly. Vanessa shook her head. No, I just didn't want to leave without saying it out loud. What I did, who I became, I could feel the tightness in my chest again, not from anger, but from recognition. That part of me once wanted someone to look me in the eye and just tell the truth. She looked up at me. Her voice shook. I'm scared. I know. Her lips parted almost to say thank you. But I raised a hand before she could. I didn't come here to forgive you. I know, she whispered. But I hoped maybe you could still save me. Not because I deserve it, because I don't want to die as a lie. It hit me then, not her words, but the way she said them. She wasn't begging. She was surrendering. I walked to the chair beside her bed, sat down, and looked her straight in the eye. I'll consider, I said. She swallowed. You will. But not for you, I added. For me. Because the truth was, carrying the weight of her choices had started to become its own prison. And I was tired of being the one who stayed silent, who let other people define what justice looked like. I didn't want to become Carol crafting guilt into a lifelong currency. I didn't want to build my worth on someone else's suffering. The decision to donate or not had to be mine, not theirs, not hers. Not because of history or guilt or legacy, but because I was finally free to choose. I stood, zipped up my coat, and turned to leave. Lauren, she called out. I turned halfway. If I had another life, maybe I'd have asked you to teach me, she said. How to be more like you. I paused. If you had asked, I might have. I left the room with the letter pressed against my chest like a shield. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I didn't feel victorious, but I felt clean. In the hallway, the nurse gave me a slight nod of recognition. I smiled faintly. Outside, the sky had cracked open to show the edge of sun. I called Harper. She gave me the letter, I said, and the confession. Yes, full detailed. You okay? I will be. We ended the call, and I walked down the sterile hallway without looking back. Not because I didn't care, but because that chapter had already begun to close. Vanessa had always been a storm. Carol, the architect of chaos. And me, I was the one they tried to erase. But the thing about truth is it always finds a way to surface, usually not to save the guilty, but to release the ones they buried. I had the truth, and for the first time, it belonged to me. Eduardo reserved a table for 3. I almost didn't go. Even as I boarded the flight to Phoenix, a quiet war raged in me. One side reminded me how far I'd come, how fiercely I had earned every inch of ground reclaimed from the women who once buried me in silence. The other whispered, "You're walking into another performance. Another attempt at reinvention. Don't fall for it." But I went. Not for them, for me. The restaurant sat tucked into a quiet street corner, all warm brick and amber light. One of those places that felt more like someone's living room than a public venue. Cozy, safe, or at least the illusion of safety. I wore navy blue. No jewelry, hair back clear face. I wanted to be a blank page walking in. I wanted the truth to write itself without performance. Eduardo stood when I entered. He looked older than I remembered from our first meeting, but there was a calmness in him that steadied the air around the table. Vanessa was already seated, pale but alert, her posture straighter than I'd expected for someone still in recovery. "Lauren," he said, voice warm, real. "Thank you for coming." I nodded and took my seat. Vanessa gave a quiet smile. "Hi." I gave a nod in return. That was all I had for her right now. For a while we just ordered food. Nothing heavy. I chose soup and grilled vegetables. Eduardo went for lamb. Vanessa only picked at her risotto. I wanted tonight to be simple, Eduardo said once the plates arrived. Not about guilt. Not about fixing the unfixable. Just a beginning. Vanessa glanced at me but didn't speak. She seemed smaller than I remembered, like someone who had deflated in the aftermath of confession. Eduardo continued, "I spent most of my life thinking I didn't have children. I buried that grief a long time ago. And now I learn I've had a daughter for 32 years, raised by another man, shaped by secrets I never got to touch." He looked at Vanessa, his eyes kind, but heavy with sorrow. "I'm not angry with you," he said to her. "But I am angry for you. And for Lauren." I said nothing, but the tension in my jaw softened, just slightly. "I want to help where I can," he added. "Not as a savior, as someone who was also lied to." Vanessa wiped at the corner of her eye. "Thank you," she whispered. It was the first real moment of sincerity I'd seen from her since this all began. But I didn't come here for warm speeches. I came here to lay it bare. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small envelope. Inside, a copy of the wire transfer. Vanessa had signed her entire trust fund redirected into the research project that once defined my life. I laid it on the table between us. "I received this yesterday," I said, voice clear. "Thank you for honoring your word." Vanessa nodded, but I held up a hand before she could speak. "This doesn't make us even. It doesn't erase what was done. But it's a beginning on my terms." "I understand," she said. I turned slightly to Eduardo. "You should also know," I added, "that Carol has started making moves again, trying to negotiate my silence. She's already spoken with an editor who hinted at retracting the retraction if I go public with the DNA fraud." Eduardo's brows knit together. "She's still trying to spin that." I nodded. "She offered to make the confession disappear. Said she would reconsider what parts of it were made under duress." Vanessa looked down, face tense. "She told me not to trust you." "Even now." "I know. I didn't listen," she said softly. "That's new," I murmured. The table fell silent. Then Eduardo said, "She can't be allowed to rewrite the truth. I'll make a public statement about the paternity fraud. My legal team will handle it. You won't have to stand alone." That pulled something in my chest tight. "You do that?" "Yes," he said. "You've already done more than anyone should have had to." I didn't cry, but my throat ached with the weight of what I wasn't saying. Vanessa reached into her coat pocket and took out a folded card. "I wrote this," she said, pushing it toward me. "You don't have to read it now, or ever. But I wanted you to know it's not an apology. It's an acknowledgement of every moment I tried to erase you." I didn't touch the card. "This dinner isn't about forgiveness," I said slowly. "It's about truth." Vanessa nodded. "Then I'll hold space for that." The meal continued in quiet. The lamb disappeared. The risotto remained mostly untouched. Near the end, Eduardo asked if I wanted dessert. No, I said, but thank you. He smiled. You remind me of myself. I take that as a compliment. It was meant to be. We rose from the table just after 9. The sky outside was a soft navy streaked with the last warmth of evening. A breeze moved through the air like something being released. As we walked toward the curb, Vanessa hesitated. Can I say something else? She asked. I turned. You don't owe me anything, she said. But I hope someday you won't always think of me as the girl who ruined you. I looked at her for a long time, and then I said I don't. Her eyes widened slightly. I think of you, I continued, as the girl who never got a chance to know who she was. Because our mother was too busy building mirrors instead of daughters. Vanessa swallowed hard. I'm still not forgiving you. But I'm not carrying you either. That's mine now. My choice. She nodded. That's fair. Eduardo offered to walk me to my car. I accepted. At the driver's door, he paused. You gave her more grace than I expected. I gave her boundaries, I said. Grace comes after. He smiled. You're remarkable, Lauren. I shrugged. Just free. He stepped back and I climbed in. As I turned the ignition, I looked back through the window. Vanessa and Eduardo stood together in the golden spill of streetlight. Two people trying to rewrite what they'd never written in the first place. I didn't envy them, but I didn't hate them either. I drove away without music. Just the sound of tires humming against pavement, of air rushing past, of the kind of silence that doesn't ask for explanation. That dinner didn't change who we had been, but maybe, just maybe, it changed who we were willing to become. Sometimes justice doesn't look like punishment. It looks like reclaiming your voice in a room that once silenced you. Lauren didn't set out for revenge. What she wanted was truth. What she earned was freedom. This story isn't just about family betrayal or DNA tests. It's about what happens when someone dares to step outside the role they were assigned, when the quiet one decides she's done being useful, done being manipulated, and starts drawing her own boundary lines. Lauren didn't forgive for the sake of peace. She didn't save her sister out of guilt. She acted from clarity. And that's what makes her powerful. To me, this story is a reminder you don't owe anyone your silence just because they call themselves family. Loyalty means nothing if it only flows one way. And forgiveness. It's not about forgetting what someone did. It's about no longer letting it define you. Lauren sat at that final dinner, not to repair what was broken, but to prove that she survived it and to begin building something on her own terms. And in the end, that's the most powerful kind of closure there is. If this story moved you, even just a little, please hit that like button. It helps more people find stories that matter. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who kept crossing the line just because they were family? Drop your story or thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want to hear more stories about quiet strength, redemption, and the courage to choose yourself, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. More powerful stories are coming. Thanks for watching. And remember, the truth doesn't need to scream to be real.